Hey, so welcome. I am recording my session for DENSI because unfortunately I had some technical issues that I don't even understand still, but I wanted to share the presentation with you. So we're talking about demystifying AI literacy and specifically empowering creativity and efficiency in education. AI has changed quite a bit and it just evolves really, really rapidly. So this is more important than ever, especially in the world of AI where, a lot of students really aren't using AI to help them learn. They're using AI to get answers. And we want to kind of move that into the area where they're using it to support their weaknesses and actually build their education. So my name is Tim Needles. I am an art and technology specialist in Smithtown, New York, on Long Island. I'm also the author of the book Steam Power from ISTE. And I look forward to sharing some of my favorite resources with you, along with some hands-on things that I wish to do in person, but we'll do them digitally, and I'll take a look and respond. So just a little bit about me to begin. I am a teacher for over 27 years now. So I've been teaching primarily in the high school for most of that time, and then I pivoted to a K-12 role where I work as technology integration specialist for classes. So I co-teach, I do PD, I support teachers with the ideas that they want to do. A lot of them, of course, involve AI. I've become almost AI is about 75% of my job now. And I also work closely with the AI companies to kind of get an idea of what's happening, where it's going, and elements like that. So I also have some TED Talks out there if you want to check them out. I help run, I'm a NICE director for New York, and we do our own talk series as well for educators if anyone's interested, especially if you're a New Yorker. We do an 8-week training, and then you could actually speak at the conference. I also work with lots of different groups. I was lucky enough to win the Tech and Learning Award just recently. Before ISTE, I'm the New York State Art Teacher of the Year in 2025, which is a huge honor, and the ISTE Making It Happen Award winner. And of course, I'm a DEN star, so I'm a big DEN enthusiast, and I love discovery. So I'm going to share some of how I use it with students and some of the great resources that are in there that you might not know about. So, when I talk about myself as a teacher, it's really transitioned quite a bit over the years. I started out in my district in 1999. So, I was really just a green teacher. It took a little while to kind of get my bearings. And then I kind of progressed into doing some AP classes. And being an art teacher means you kind of teach a little bit of everything. So you become, really diverse. And I went into media more, where I was doing film and animation with students. I started bringing students on trips around the world, which was exciting. We went to Japan, Galapagos, Paris, Italy. Now I'm going to be bringing teachers on trips next year for the first time. So we're going to be going to England, Scotland, and Ireland during this summer. We're going to visit some EdTech companies, some schools, and of course, some really cool travel destinations. Then I transitioned in the pandemic into my current role, which is tech specialist, which is really great because you get to collaborate more with people. And that's something that I never really had a chance to do. I always wanted to, and I just never had the opportunity. So, when we look at the United States right now, most of the states now have some AI guidance, and the ones that don't have it are kind of working on it. We had a Department of Educational Technology that had some really great advice for educators in terms of using AI, which is always keep humans in the loop. So keep it teacher and student centered. That's really kind of key in using AI. And, so AI literacy is becoming more and more important just because it's becoming more and more a factor in our lives, whether we're aware of it or not. So, I see a lot of resistance to artificial intelligence, especially among students. I understand that because I would not want to be going to college right now and entering the job market in this crazy turmoil. And it also has obviously some really negative potential environmental effects as well, and we need to, as educators and educate education in general, need to kind of help push the companies that are doing the right thing in terms of being ethical in their energy usage. So, the other things you want to consider are privacy and data security. I'm in New York where that's a must. We're not even allowed to use tools that don't have data security. It should be aligned to the vision of learning, right? So it shouldn't be the other way around. It's not about, wedging tech tools into situations. It's about when does it fit and how does it fit best to support student learning. Those tools should also be inspectable, explainable, and overridable. So that's really important. Some tools are black boxes and you have no idea where it's getting the information from. And then other tools are really like rags, like Notebook LM. You know exactly where it's getting its sources from because you put the sources in. So that's really helpful and a safe way to kind of work with students, especially. We want to minimize bias and promote fairness. That's huge because, a lot of the people that were building some of these tools were white guys. And a lot of the stuff initially was skewed towards white men. So if you were looking and you asked it to create an image of a doctor, the likelihood is that it was going to be a white person. And a lot of companies have addressed that. One of the other things in terms of promoting fairness is that as a creative person, we have a unique voice. And one of the things that AI kind of does is it kind of just marginalizes. So it just makes everything homogenized, right? So it's a very clean, professional sounding thing, but it actually takes the uniqueness and creativity out. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen, especially with like student writing or anything that's creative. Be context aware and effective across contexts, right? So there are specialized tools that I love, things like Suno for creating music, that don't work across every single context, but they do work often. So we're going to be looking at the big tech tools that you use for a little bit of everything, and then the more specific tech tools that you use for situational uses only. It should be transparent, accountable, and responsible use. And I think that's true of basically everything in education. So, we are teching more than ever in the classroom. That's one of the big things that is happening. So, one of the trends you see, like in 2018-19, we had 841 tools. We're now well over 3,000. So, the average student uses over 50 tools. The average educator uses over 50 tools now. So this information is from 2024, and it's changed even since then, which is kind of crazy. So, it's really hard for an average teacher to keep up with these tools, which is, where I kind of come in with my role to support teachers, because they're able to come to me and just say, like, I have this idea, could you help me find the tools to do it? Or, maybe it's already created and I don't even need to create it. So in terms of the evolution of AI, this is just sort of important to know. So the reality is that we kind of started with chatbots. AI actually was there years ago. I started using it about 10 years ago. They had kind of experiments and things like that were interesting that I used. So it gave me an early heads up. But when ChatGPT dropped for the first time, that was kind of the big moment for AI. And now there's multiple chatbots. They have different personalities. They give you different results. There's a lot of different image generators. Almost every chatbot has an image generator now built in. One of the things that you definitely want to be mindful of sharing with students is social media and deepfakes. It's very hard to just take information and accept it any longer. You really need to, even on the most trivial kind of posts that you might see, about 60% or more of what you see on social media is AI. And, there's things that are kind of ridiculous, like, you see like a monster walking through New York City, so you kind of have an idea that's either like a sci-fi movie or someone created it with AI. But there's even things like cute cat videos. I see a lot of cute cat videos and then the cat's missing an arm. And you realize that's AI, it just made a mistake. So I see a lot of like fish and cat videos on there that are created by AI because they get clicks. And then algorithmic feeds. So understanding how algorithms work, really important. it helps you kind of be better in terms of your prompting and your use of AI. So in terms of educators, we want to have the technical knowledge, the applied tool use, being able to manage the tool, and then the ethical evaluation. So you want to use ethical tools, obviously. So in terms of our core vision today, we're shifting from consumption to creation. Right? So you don't want to just be a passive consumer. There's a big talk now about screen time. I heard it quite a bit at the ISTE AACD conference. But I believe there's a really big difference between passively using tech tools and then using tech tools to create. So if it's your imagination, if it's your creativity, and you're using the tool to support it, I see no problem with that. It's very, very different. It's also very different K to 12. So, like, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, like, I really do believe in kind of minimizing the tech tools because you should sort of have play. If you look at the data, a lot of the Nordic countries have the strongest education systems because they emphasize play and the human skills of collaboration and working together and playing together. And then I think, you want to introduce tools. So like I've worked with second graders using AI. You just want to use a really safe tool that is creative based. So I use Adobe Express and we make animations. So all they need to do is use their voice. It's a very passive technological activity, but it really, shows them what AI could do, which is, everyone kind of loves animation, but, I taught animation for 25 years. And it used to take like a whole class, a full week to make a decent, 1 minute, 2 minute animation. Now you could do that in 1 or 2 minutes just with sound. So it's kind of tremendous, really exciting to be honest. Like, you're able to kind of get rid of that skill gap and anyone can create. So you want to show them that, this is a good way to use these tools. Right? So, being able to create and tell the stories that are in your head and make them real is exciting. And in my experience, like, we did it at an elementary school and I introduced it to second and third grade. They did a very short piece as a class. And then in fourth and fifth grade, we did the entire grade. Each student told a short story about what their favorite winter activity was. It was one of the cutest projects I've ever done in my life. And it kind of introduced them to the technology without any kind of threat in just a creative way. So, in middle school and high school, the problem that we run into is that AI is just being used as an answer engine. So, like, for the most part, students aren't using it to support their learning. They're just getting the answers, so if teachers are kind of giving traditional homework, the students will just take a picture and get the answers without actually learning anything. So it's creating some really lazy learners, and that's a fear. And we need to kind of shift from that mode into the inquiry mindset, right? So this is like bringing the rigor back into education and the kind of the fun struggle of exploration. It's not fun to kind of fail and not get where you want to, but it is more meaningful when you succeed that way. So, like if you're able to do it with one prompt and you're done, you haven't learned that much. Sometimes you need a little bit of struggle to really emphasize the learning. So the crisis isn't the technology, it's the erosion of durable human skills, imagination, creativity, and agency. So that's why I feel like I, as a creative person, as an artist, as a writer, as an art teacher, as a media teacher, I teach K to 12 and then I also teach college, have a sense of kind of where we need to go a little bit in this. Education has been sort of trapped in a very old model for a very long time. And for years, I was thinking like, we kind of need to evolve. And the pandemic pushed it a little bit in a really difficult way. Like, speaking of struggle, like there was no more struggle as a teacher. Like, I failed more in the first month there than I've ever failed as a teacher in my life. But you find a way through. And I found some, things that really worked that I still continue and use today, right? I kind of replaced, mandatory homework with optional creative challenges that students wanted to take part in. So, that's kind of key. So here's the pedagogical shift, talking about the student's role. where they were just a passive digital consumer and relying on AI just for the output. You really want to change that to the architect of intent. So you want them to lead the creative process. You want them to come up with the imaginative idea and then use AI to actually see that idea through. So that's really the creative power way. And this is all elements that I'm kind of working on now in my current book with ISTE that will be out in 2027. So, it changes the AI's role as well. So it's not just the answer engine. It's not just the final authority. It's really important to help students understand that, even as AI improves, it's still not always correct, right? So, like, yeah, one of the nice things to do is to flip the classroom and have a lesson that, the students play the role of the teacher and kind of give AI the lesson. So have it write a poem and say, like, it needs 4 metaphors and it needs 2 similes. And, I want it to be a theme about the ocean. So give it like a number of different elements and then grade it. And you'll find that, like, it's about a 95, 96, depending on which AI tool you're using. Some of the tools go up to 98. Some of the tools are, 89 to 92. So it really is a good lesson to kind of show the students how accurate artificial intelligence could be. Again, this is a moving target. It's changing all the time. But we want to kind of move from that answer engine to the co-prototyping partner. So, one of the things that I think is important is coming up with iteration. So a lot of my students, they want to do the assignment and then hand it in, get a grade, and that's it, right? But, like, that's not what the learning is about. The learning is kind of that middle process. So, like, rather than have them do just one output, if they're using artificial intelligence in the process, you're going to be able to get to that final product much quicker, and it's going to look much better. That's just the reality. I mean, I learned graphic design in college, and, like, you're able to do everything that would take a week to a month now in a couple minutes on some of the tools like Adobe Express and Canva, or even Google and Microsoft. So, it's important to have iterations. So, like, I'll have them do 3 different versions. I'll give them 5 minutes to create a different version, and then choose their favorite parts of the 3 different versions, and then make a final output. So some of that is also documenting the process. So one of the things I pay close attention to is colleges and seeing how they're using AI. And again, that's all over the place. Like, I work at a college that the students can use it depending on the professor. But there's other schools that will give you a license for a tool and say, go ahead and use it. And, it's up to the teacher to show how you're using it. So it could be documenting how you're using the tool. It could be documenting, where, you pivoted because of the tool. And we'll look at that more closely, because in the assessment piece, we want to switch from just one final product to really looking at the learning process and the journey, right? So what parts are human, what parts are AI? And, like, there's smart times to use AI. So I'm not going to fault a student, if it's going to save them 30 minutes, it's like, that makes sense. But, like, I want to make sure the learning is there, and I want to make sure the human elements are there. So that's really important. So here's the challenge. So education, we're kind of shifting from that 1950s lecture model. I still see teachers kind of doing that sometimes, to a more dynamic, personalized era. One of the magical things about artificial intelligence is that it allows you to teach in a really personalized way. So I could now have assignments that are catered to students' interests, to cater to students' abilities. And there's times that, like, you should also kind of go against that. If you're doing a collaborative project that's a class-wide project, it's great to, and focus on the students' strengths, but I think you also need to build up their weaknesses. But you want to use these tools as a creative catalyst. I think that's the really important part. I just don't see it happening enough now, especially in education. So the opportunity is that AI can improve with data. So the more we use it, the better it gets. And it enables personalized learning at scale, which is, like, you could never have, a class of 30 where you're personalizing everything to each one of them, but now it's totally possible. And you want it to act as a co-creator for students, and teachers, and a productivity engine for both as well. So, in terms of the pillars of AI literacy, these are three really huge elements. So, first is understanding. So, we need to understand and grasp how machine learning models work, how they process data, how they mimic communication, uh, and sort of like where they came from and sort of where they're going. We have a pretty rough understanding of that. So, the models have been changing, and every model has, new benefits. And as they scale and get bigger, the tools, are potentially going to actually hit the part where it's real intelligence. There's a lot of questions about when that will be. The most common answer is 2030, which is also, by the way, the year I retire, which is pretty exciting. It's probably a really good time to retire, a really bad time to look for a job. But you want to have students understand, how to write a good prompt, how prompts work, sort of what AI actually does. So if you're putting it into, Google Gemini, for example, is the information going out back into the internet? In a school, the answer is no. If you're using a personal device, the answer is yes. So it's really important to know that because, schools protect your privacy, but if you're using a personal device, it doesn't. So everything that they're putting out there goes out into the model and is used. So in terms of creating how to use text to image tools, and like those tools, are people think they're just for creating images, but they could do lots of other things too. And that's some of the stuff we'll work on today. So they could boost vocabulary, they could boost artistic precision, and then evaluating. So I think this is kind of the key thing that I would really emphasize for this year, especially. So, you want to model safe and ethical and responsible use as an educator. But I also have students actually evaluate the tools themselves. So I mentioned that flipped classroom model. That works really well. And I think that's a good example. So, like, I'll have different tools, and all the tools are obviously okay to use by the school district, but I'll have students kind of use the same assignment, put in the same prompt on three different tools, and then see what the different results are so you have an idea of how they work and what they're good at and what they're bad at. So, evaluating the tools, evaluating the ethics, just having a conversation with students about the ethics of AI, really important, I think, because their world that they're going into is going to be really far different than ours. And almost every job market is being impacted by artificial intelligence. So it's important that they have a better understanding of it. I mean, there's blue collar jobs like plumbers that, like, the job really hasn't changed very much. And that's fine. Eventually, everything gets touched, right? So, like, if you take a look at, like, Hyundai is working with robots and AI in their car factories. So basically, you have 12,000 robots. The moment one learns anything, they all learn anything. Another great example is like Waymo or self-driving cars. There's about 3 or 4 major brands out there now. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen them. I've driven in some myself. It was both scary and exhilarating, and actually a kind of a really nice ride. So Amazon has its own self-driving car company, and Google. So it's kind of really interesting. But essentially, like, with Waymo's as example, like when one car sees traffic or notices a problem, all the cars are aware of it. So, these are things to sort of understand. And it's also important to just talk to students about how AI is interrupting everything, including education, right? So it's certainly changing going to college quite a bit. I wish I had Notebook LM when I went to college. It would be so much easier to kind of understand things. But there are pros and cons to everything. The AI is no different than the internet or the photography. So, like, it's going to change culture. It's going to change the way we act, and it's going to make a big impact. We don't even know how big of an impact. Some of the thoughts are that it's as important as, like, fire for humans, and then other people say, it's big, as big as the internet. So it's hard to really gauge at this point. But it is important to speak to students about this. So when we talk about AI tools in schools, these are 6 of the most, use. So there's, of course, OpenAI's ChatGPT. That was the one that kind of broke out at first, but they were kind of like a little late on education. And that company's kind of in a little bit of trouble. They're getting sued quite a bit. It's questionable in terms of their finances, like whether they really will make it or not. I think they have to kind of address a bunch of different things. Um, you know, According to their internals, they think they're going to be breaking even sometime like 2028 to 2030. But I question, like, they had to do a lot of changes, and some of their innovations kind of went backwards. So a lot of the people left that company and went on to some of the other ones. So it's right now it's in flux, I think. There's Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft owns 50% of OpenAI and ChatGPT too. So you should know that. Like, Copilot looks a lot like ChatGPT. They act a lot alike. Microsoft also now has an agentic platform, so Microsoft Workplace. Copilot, I was a fan of early on. I used it quite a bit. It was good in image creation, but we're really in like an AI war. So like month to month, these tools change quite a bit. There's Google Gemini, which is the one that I use quite a bit in my district. We are Google School, so obviously Gemini interacts directly with Google Classroom, and it's very easy to use to prepare things. So we'll look at that as well. There's School AI. This is one of the education specific tools. My opinion is that this is really strong in terms of student uses. So, like, I use School AI whenever it's a class and the students have a personalized learning experience. Magic School, very similar. Magic School was kind of like the big one out initially, and they have. They kind of broke down a chatbot into all of the different things teachers would want to do. I also use it quite a bit with students. So both School AI and Magic School have quite a bit of protections in terms of being able to see what students are doing on them. But I do like, upper middle school and high school students to have an experience of working with the chatbot, maybe even building their own. Google, Microsoft, Magic School, and School AI all allow that. And then Brisk. So Brisk is a little bit different than the others. One of the notable things about Brisk is that it works with other tools. So like as a Google school, Brisk works directly within Google Docs and things like that. So that's really handy. It's a little bit different because it works as an extension. So it's sort of like there all the time. But sort of like everything has its own strengths and weaknesses here. So it depends on your school, what you're allowed to use, and what project you're doing. Like, what is the student learning about? In terms of creative tools, these are the big three for me. There's Adobe Express, which is my favorite. I've been using it since it came out. As an artist, I always use Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere. So like it's kind of like a baseline version of those tools that kind of helps you learn those tools. Canva is one of the most popular for sure. Adobe Express and Canva, very similar tools. I think Adobe's stronger in terms of creating video, animation, podcasting, that kind of thing. Canva, their AI engines are external. So, like our school, we can't use all of them. So it really depends on your school and whether you purchase the tool or you're using the free version. So Adobe Express and Canva, I believe, both are free to all K-12 educators. Adobe Express, I'm sure of. And then there's Notebook LM. So this is a different kind of tool. This is a Google tool. So Notebook LM is a different kind of AI. So we actually approved it for all of secondary in my district just recently because it's one of the safest tools to use. So it is the kind of tool where you put in your own sources and it's not open to the whole internet. So it could help you in lots of different ways. As a teacher, it's invaluable. You could put in lots of sources and then create slideshows. You can create, tests or quizzes. You could make visuals. Really, really, I mean, like how good it's gotten that fast is remarkable. So both Notebook LM and Gemini work together. You could take a notebook and drop it into Gemini and use something from that. These are all strong tools that all have their different abilities. We'll kind of look a little bit more at that in some of our hands-on sections. So, when I start with students, one of the things that I like to do is talk about AI. What is it? How is it impacting students, and how could you use it to hack your own learning? So this is, part of my presentation to students. I kind of talk about like the different tools. So there's the general purpose tools like Google Gemini, which is multimodal, ChatGPT, which is really versatile, Claude, which is probably the strongest tool for coding out there. It's also very good for writing. So, those are the big three general purpose ones, the large language models. Claude, which is run by Anthropic, is one of the most interesting to watch. If you have an opportunity with students, so Claude is the company's Anthropic, and it's run, started by a brother and sister who came from OpenAI. So they were working at OpenAI, they were doing research, and then they just weren't happy with the lack of research, and they kind of started their own company. One of the interesting things about the company is that it works with almost all the other companies. So it works with Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Dario, who is one of the co-founders, really interesting person to follow because he's very open about the ethics. So the positives and the negatives, he wrote an essay about each, sort of like his vision of like where AI is heading. He really will answer questions that some of the other leaders won't tackle, in terms of like, this is taking over a lot of jobs. How do you feel about that? And his answers are really interesting in terms of like people are going to need something else to help define themselves, because it's like, the workforce might not be the thing. We tend to, a lot of our personality, a lot of who we are, a lot of our purpose is wrapped up in our occupation. And, one of his fears is like, as the job sector changes and people are not as defined by their work, like, what are they going to do? Like, his answer is sort of like the arts, which, as an artist, I totally understand. But, he if you look at YouTube, there's a couple interviews with him that are fantastic. So I do recommend that if you want to have a class discussion, especially when he talks to, someone from Google or something like that. There's a few interviews where there's three, and I'll share these also in the resources, so you don't have to look them up. So there's productivity and research. So Notebook LM, which we talked about, great for summarization, great for research. I will be honest with you. I'm a full-time teacher, so I don't have time to research all this AI during school hours, and you don't have that much energy to do it otherwise. So one of the ways I kind of get around this is I take all of the different information that I get each week about AI, and part of the real thing is knowing where to get good information. That's a whole nother skill. Teaching research is really important because you need to know where the good sources are. So I put them all into Notebook LM, and then I make a podcast for myself to listen to on the drive to work or the drive home. I'll make sure I mention that I'm a K-12 educator, so make sure that it's relative to what I do. That's a really interesting use. It's a good way to hack it. I also, I took a class in quantum physics, and I'm an art teacher, right? So I was way out of my league. But quantum is really interesting. We know we need quantum computers to run AI, and that, around 2030 should be the time that the quantum computers are ready. But I just didn't understand all of the science. I understood aspects of it because I'm a photographer and a filmmaker. So, there were things that I did understand. But I needed to take all of my notes and drop it into Notebook LM and make graphics so I could see it visually, and make podcasts so I could listen to it and kind of make sure that I was understanding it correctly. So it really helped my learning there. There's Perplexity, which is fantastic for searching. Fathom, which is really big for meetings. And then, of course, the content and creative stuff. So Adobe's a big one. So Adobe Firefly is their AI engine, really good at graphics and video. It also works well with Google. So you could, use Google within Adobe. And I always support when the companies work together and you're able to use multiple tools together. It just makes it so much easier for us as consumers. So Firefly is within, when you're using, if you're doing text to image in Adobe Express, you're using Firefly. So there's Google Nano Banana. So again, if you're creating something in either Notebook LM or in Gemini, Nano Banana is the image generator for that. And there's things like Veo, which is the video generator for that. Although now they have some additional tools, so like they're kind of branching out, and there's Google Vids and things like that. But this is just to kind of introduce the prominent tools and to talk to students about how could you hack learning. So, we all as learners have strengths and weaknesses. I was definitely afraid of math in high school, and I loved art class. And I know people that are afraid of art class and loved math. So, you just need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and how you can kind of compensate and strengthen your weaknesses. So that's kind of the key. And this is something I talk to students about for college specifically so that they can go into college and use AI to support their own learning. So, this is the first hands-on element that we want to kind of talk about. So language being the lens. So we're going to talk about using text to image for literacy. So, with vocabulary specifically, one of the things is that, you need to be very precise to get high quality AI. So a lot of the kids that I find that are really successful using artificial intelligence are successful because they are very good at prompting, right? So if you know how to write a good prompt and you're very precise about the words you use, you get much stronger outputs. That's the same, of course, with teachers, administrators, and anyone else. But it's actually something that we should definitely be teaching. So students have to transition from like a vague one-line prompt, like make me a poster of this for Halloween to, design me a poster that's 11 by 14 for social media that's for Facebook, and I want to deal with an audience that is 14 to 29. So, the more information you could put, the better it is. So you want to build descriptive mastery within students. So that means really using adjectives. So I don't have students create any prompt without at least 3 adjectives. Very specific things like lighting and cues, like, what kind of color tones are you looking for? What kind of lighting? Do you want it to be dramatic? Do you want it to seem everyday? Do you want it to seem handheld? What kind of artistic style do you want? Do you want it to be a cartoon? What kind of cartoon? Do you want it to have like a Van Gogh style that is fun and colorful? Or do you want it to be a black and white cartoon like a 1934 Mickey Mouse? So like there's all these different kind of elements. And this is a hands-on activity that I do with students that we're going to do together. So, in lower school, I kind of emphasize the visual storytelling aspects. So illustrations through text-to-image tools to tell stories. So the students have stories. That's never a problem. It's all about being able to illustrate their stories. So visual storytelling is a major skill, regardless of what you're doing, what you're going into. It's something that is really, really important. And engagement and reading comprehension really soar when you add a little gamification to it. So that works really well. In upper school, we talk more about media analysis, taking on like the AI literacy straight on, like critical thinking, what the exercises are focused on with AI content versus original human content. So I use things like I worked with the band OK Go. There's a great tool that's free out there called OK Go Sandbox, where they took all of their videos and they made them into projects, right? And like what's amazing about it is they use technology, but it is all human skill. So like, where they probably could have created a video much easier and cheaper with artificial intelligence, part of what we like about it is the humanness, so they made a huge Rube Goldberg machine that's like the size of a full building, and they failed I think 97 times in trying to do it, and they only succeeded about 7 times, but they succeeded 7 times. So, taking this on in secondary is really helpful to really, students understand why AI is important, whether they like it or they dislike it, but, really being able to push the human side is kind of key here. So this is a piece from my book that I'm kind of sharing. So, one of the things that you have to change here is the way that we grade too. So you don't want to just grade on the final product anymore, right? So I kind of changed it to 70% of the grade is actually the process. I'm an artist, so I'm all about process, but we can't grade the invisible. We have to kind of shift everything, and like it should be more kind of a portfolio system where you show what you're doing, and that's what's happening in colleges. Students have to kind of say how they're using AI. So that means the failed prompts, the conceptual pivots, like where did AI give you an idea and you changed your mind, the iteration. So like I have students do at least 3 different versions, sometimes 5 different versions of a project, and then take the strengths, and then so I need you to show me what you took from each piece. You need that reflection and everything. So that's really important. So it's not just about the final anymore. And for years we talked about how we shouldn't be teaching just for the test. So this really has been happening, but just slowly. And certainly the technology is pushing it forward a little bit. And then, of course, this is a project that I do, which is a 30-minute sprint. So reverse engineering the reality. So you see the AI output here, and then you see the intent. So what you're going for, the constraint, the limitations, the style. That's where the artistic side comes in, and the tone, another artistic side. So the task I give students is, you need to have a high quality AI output. And then the action is students must work backwards utilizing computational thinking to write the master prompt that would have created it. So if I give them a high quality AI image, a high quality AI video, even like a Waymo car, so like, it depends on how much time you have and what you're teaching. But the takeaway is that by deconstructing the components of a really high quality project that is built with AI, they understand the conceptual fluency better. So deconstruction is a great way to learn anything. It's always, I think, a fantastic way to work. If you want to learn how a TV works, take one apart. It works really well, and it works just as well with AI. So, whatever you teach, you could find a high quality AI creation to kind of deconstruct. And, even if the students don't get it exactly right, it's really helpful. So now we're going to start the hands-on challenge. This is a very simple one. This is great to do with students. We're going to do it together and take about 10 minutes. So this is called a vocabulary sprint. The idea is to experience literacy as prompt engineering. So we're going to take a baseline, really vague prompt, like a monster in the forest, and transform it. So you could use all different types of styles, surrealism, watercolor, different angles, different lighting, and see how language changes reality. I would also suggest trying this with different tools. So take the same exact prompt and pop it into a few different tools and look at the variations to get a better idea of what the tools actually do and what their defaults are. So when it says use language, that's about using like very specific vocabulary, but you might also want to try foreign language because you'll get very different results with different languages, which is an interesting factor. So let's take an example. We'll kind of take a look. This is a version I did here in Google Gemini. So rather than a scary monster, it was a cartoon monster out of like the 1930s style. I don't know if these guys are the monsters or if this meatball guy is the monster. But we will start from scratch and try again. So we are going to say create an image of a monster in the forest. And it should take a couple seconds. So, you want to start just with this to kind of get an idea of what you're working with. That is a pretty scary monster, especially compared to the last one. So you're able to just download this if you want. You could also copy it right here, or you could just share it right through Drive. All of those work. And then we can go ahead and say of a cute monster in a hipster forest during a all-night concert. So, see how much you could add. So this is good because it pushes students to think about the vocabulary better and to get the results they're looking for So, it helps kind of build some of that precision. So there you go. Very different looking guy. He looks like a dude having a good time at the Summer Midnight Sounds. So I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a chance to do this, and then share. So again, it's you can see the QR code here for the Padlet, and you could use Padlet itself to actually create. So Padlet is one of the AI tools that is totally possible. So you can do everything right in Padlet if you want to. So I'll give everyone a moment to try this. So here are two examples that I like from previous sessions that I did with teachers. So it's just interesting at the range of different possibilities. So lots of interesting cute monsters that look like they might be out of a Pixar movie, and lots of really scary monsters that look like they're out of nightmares or horror movies. So, really interesting, but we do this with students in all kinds of ways. So, like, the prompt itself, the vague prompt, could be from a book you're reading, it could be about something you're teaching about. We've done it in like foreign language class, learning about the different, legends that are foreign. So, how could you use this kind of thing in class? Once you get better at creating images and sort of like being very specific, you're able to do all kinds of things. So we do a lot of things for the school itself. You can see this is our class of 26 postcard that we created in a 1950s kind of style. So we are the Smithtown Bulls at Smithtown High School East. And, even using it for like, this was for an English class, the infographic. So we kind of created an 80s style. This was in Adobe Express. We have an 80s day at the school where everyone kind of focuses on their favorite things about 1980s, which is now ancient history and makes me feel super old. But the good news is I retire in a couple years. So here's a couple other examples. These are created in the companion tool Notebook LM. So Notebook LM, again, is a RAG. So a RAG is a different kind of AI that's a little bit safer for students to use because it doesn't open up to the entire internet. So, you could put in different sources. I put in some articles and some information about the artist Yayoi Kusama, and I created this for an elementary class. So, it kind of shows some of her playful elements of her work. The polka dots everywhere, that's from an actual art installation that I brought my students to. Really cool. The playful pumpkins, certainly really popular around Halloween. We do a project. So it talks about her being a famous artist from Japan. She's probably one of the 10 most famous living artists. Many people know her from her work with like Louis Vuitton and different fashion brands. The endless nets, the rooms that go on forever. So these rooms using mirrors are probably the most famous thing that she's known for. The infinity rooms, really, really cool if you ever get to experience one. The soft sculptures, so these are sculptures of 3D like fabric that are kind of like done in different vehicles like a boat. And you can see her self-portrait. So she uses her own image quite a bit in her work. Really interesting artist. And then, here's the other version of it. So this is from a high school class where we're looking at students' favorite songs. So this is The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift, a really popular one. And we pulled out all of the different elements from creative writing. So the Shakespearean allusions to the original Ophelia and Hamlet, the intertextuality, subverting the tragic archetype, how it's not a tragedy, and she kind of changed it. We also looked at the metaphors, the tower and the grave, and of course the pre-Raphaelite art influences. So, she references a famous painting that is now getting a lot more attention as a result. So, having students do this kind of work, this is a good follow-up activity after they've learned to create prompting a little bit better, taking their favorite song and then creating an image, an infographic about the specific elements and how it relates to class is a really good way to kind of see the tools in action, so the learning actually happen. And I love creating a graphic like this too. So this is done, we actually okayed Notebook LM for all of the secondary students in my district. And I like the comparison to the Shakespeare source material, the Hamlet versus the Taylor Swift version. So Death by Drowning versus Saved My Heart from the Fate of Ophelia. Here's another example, and this is kind of just shows how widespread you're able to be with artificial intelligence now. So, I worked with a gym class, so even physical education is something where you can kind of use this. So, one of the things I learned is that a lot of the pro football teams actually release some of their playbooks from years ago. So we took some of those playbooks and aligned it to the team that we have in Smithtown and created some new plays based on the pro plays. So, creating the kind of visualization of those plays is really great. I wish I had this when I was on the football team. So, it talks about the coaching, it talks about the handoff, it talks about, the key elements of the play, what kind of works, the defenders, the quarterback, and the target paths. So, even sports is something that you can kind of work into, which is great. And this is by far the most popular version that I've done with students, the brain rot glossary. So, they love and hate this at the same time, which is kind of a success, I think. So this is looking at the new lexicon, all of the new language. So it's a nice thing to do in comparison with learning prompting because students often use some of this lingo when they're actually creating prompts. So it kind of looks at standard English versus the Gen Alpha brain rot language. So, probably the most popular brain rot term is probably 6-7, which every middle school teacher and student seems to know, but there's lots of other terms that maybe are regional or less used. So rather than saying he is very charismatic and looks great, the translation would be bro has infinite riz and is mogging everyone, total sigma. So I could say I learned a lot during this. The students really thought it was funny and interesting, and it got quite a rise. So here's another example, the energy shift from Aura, which is a positive thing, cool points, and it's giving. So it's giving 2000 pop star energy or 1990s grunge energy. So here is our next hands-on element. This is bringing legends to life. So this is something that I do every year with classes. It's interdisciplinary project-based learning. So I really like integrating different subject matters together. So we take local myths. They don't need to be local. They could be, in Spanish class, we look at Spanish myths. We look at, classic English myths from books. So whatever works for you. But local myths and legends work and use AI tools to co-create a visual narrative. So this is about building not just the prompting, but also the visual storytelling. So really important to be able to communicate yourself effectively. Visual storytelling is kind of key. This is one of those really necessary human skills that I mentioned earlier. So the idea is that we take the framework and it turns standard reading into an active gamified media project. So the idea is that the students are going to see AI as reflecting their command of language, or you have to be really good at your descriptiveness. And we don't want the AI to just interpolate, right? So we don't want it to do the thinking for them. We want them to be very specific about what they're looking for and actually create it. So again, we're going to use the same QR code for the Padlet, and I'm curious to see how you do with this. So take a local legend. We used an example. This is an example that I used. This is actually the demonstration example. So we take a local legend, and we're from Smithtown, and there's a legend that we have about our town that Richard Smith, the founder, bought it from the Native Americans, and they said, everything that he could ride around on a bull in one day would be the town. So it turns out that is probably not true, but I did have a couple of his descendants in my class who, still sting to it. So, the idea is that they imagine the details, think it out a little bit, imagine the colors, the atmosphere, what kind of style you want, and then write the AI prompt. So put your ideas into the AI. That's an example of the actual prompt I used for this, a friendly cartoon illustration of Richard Smith riding a brown bull called Whispers, sunset over a dusty trail path and tracing a map of Long Island, whimsical children's book style, vibrant colors. right? So I like, kind of creating a comic book style where it's a longer narrative. You can see some of the different terms there: sunset, dusty ball, dusty trail, happy bull. Like, do you want the bull happy, sad, indifferent? Do you want, the man Richard Smith looking proud, or confused? Like, bread and cheese hollow is one of the roads. So like, step four is generate and share. So the idea is to see how close you can get to your vision. So I do have students kind of write down their idea before they start, and see how close they can come based on their language. So share the unique vision with class. Always really fun. This is a version I do in elementary and middle school, but there's, of course, lots of options there as well. So, that's what we do. So I'll give everyone a little bit of time to do it. Okay, so now we're going to look at ethical boundaries. So the ethics are really, really important. And I think it's essential that you really have some of these conversations, especially with middle school and high school kids. And one of the things that we want to talk about is just basic digital citizenship. So modeling safe and effective habits for the next generation of digital natives. I think that's something that really should be standardized at this point. It's so important that, like, you want every student coming into a school to sort of have a basic digital citizenship awareness. And I think the next thing, co-creation. So this is something that I am really a big believer in. So teaching students not just to use AI for answers, but to use it for brainstorming, not as a shortcut, but as a companion. So working with the artificial intelligence together to create. And then, of course, bias awareness. So understanding the limitations of AI, understanding the limitations of the data from the different models, especially the difference between using a tool that might be safe for schools in school and using a tool at home, which have very different rules. So really, really essential to have some of those conversations. I think students will use a tool in school, think it's safe, go home, use a different tool and not realize that they're sharing their information. And, there's a few things that we want to talk about in addition to this. So digital citizenship, has sort of expanded in the age of AI. So, one of the biggest issues that we want to make sure we address here is student mental health. A lot of younger students will kind of use AI as a therapist or looking for medical advice or something like that, and get some potentially harmful results. So it's important to make sure that they understand that there's safe and really effective, people in the school district that could help them, and what some of the resources for help are, so they're not just taking advice from a chatbot that might be giving them some bad information. So that's one important element. There are many more, I think. When to use AI and how to use AI and which AI to use are really important. I would even include things like the environmental impact here as something that you might consider under the ethics. So, like, I like to use AI tools that are more responsible, like the companies are more responsible in terms of their data centers and things like that. So that's another really important factor as well. So all of these things are certainly major to talk about and have some of these conversations. So next I want to talk about efficiency. So, part of AI literacy for educators is really finding a way to reclaim some of your prep time. So, this is, as a classroom teacher, you just get inundated with the different tasks you have to do, especially, depending on what level you are, you have a totally different situation. And, if you have to cover things and you have clubs, it's very hard to get it all done, working with parents, working with grading, working with students. So one of the real benefits of this technology is potentially you could use it and get time back that you could spend with students in a more meaningful way. So, one of the things in my AI masterclass with Discovery that I talk about is kind of, using a couple of prompts that will really help you. So one of the signature prompts is, I am a, fourth grade, fifth grade 12th grade teacher, the tasks that drain my time are task A and task B. So literally tell AI what your biggest tasks are. Where are you spending most of your time? So I actually created for my district a copyable version of this prompt that will kind of ask 3 or 4 questions about your job and help you identify that, because sometimes it's not so easy to even tell. So I created a gem that actually will ask you 4 to 5 questions about your job. It'll ask you as many questions as it needs until it understands, and then help find ways to actually address some of the big time sucks. So there's iterative dialogue. So ask me 3 questions about my specific skills and needs before providing a workflow. So that's really important. So one of the things about using artificial intelligence in school districts is that it's often set to not remember us, where the tools in the private sector are meant to remember us and get to know us and get to know our writing style, get to know when we're waking up. My phone, there's just so many different AI tools in there that it tells me, like, you're 10 minutes from home. And it's like, how did you know I was going home? Because it's like we're animals of habit. So it just starts to pick up on our actions that are repeated. So you kind of want to have a dialogue back and forth with the AI, and then create some solutions. So you want automated solutions. So how could you use the output for differentiated readings, newsletters, lesson structures? So I will say one place that almost all of the teachers I've worked with have saved tons of time is just creating lessons. It's so much faster now. You're able to use almost any of the tools I talked about to create a much better lesson, and you could do it really fast. So you could really personalize it to the students, which is great, like keep their interest in there. You can gamify it. You can even vibe code. So vibe coding, if you don't know what that is when you don't really need to know a lot about coding. You're just asking the chatbot to create a game for you based on, we'll take the example of Richard Smith and the bull from previous. So like, make a game with a bull riding around the town of Smithtown, and the different stops. So, you could just ask it to create a game, and now it's able to do that because it's come such a long way with coding. And then the winning weekend. So the idea is you want to really shift your hours of planning into seconds of refinement. So rather than, the bulk of the creating, you're really now just acting as an editor, refining the tools. And, this brings me to the next piece here, which is kind of like the new movement in AI, which is agentic AI. So the word comes from AI agents. So agents are AI elements that will actually take action for you. So you don't need to ask them every day to take action. They're just going to automatically do it. So as an example, I really like to travel. So when I travel, I use AI to create an itinerary. I really highly recommend this. We're in the summer now. If anyone has any travel, make sure you specify things like, are you traveling with kids? Are you looking for kid-friendly restaurants and things to do? How much time do you have? Do you want points of rest? Like, do you want to just sit on the beach for an hour? So, mention when you're going, where you're going. It'll, make sure you tell it to, bring in elements such as the weather and your energy level and things like that. What your likes and dislikes are, what you're hoping to see. So that's a great way to use AI. The agentic AI will go one step further and actually make the reservations at restaurants. It'll make the reservations at different events. So it actually takes action. So this is the year of agentic AI for education. So many of you probably haven't used it yet, but you probably will in the coming year. So my school district gave me access to agentic AI through Google. So I use Google Workspace, and there's lots of different agentic elements that are now going to be showing up all around the different tools we use. So some of them you have to pay for, other ones are going to be free to kind of show us how great they are and that we want to buy them. So one of the ones that is really popular is AI suggested feedback. So this is something that Google shares in Google Classroom. So students put in their work, and it looks through their work and suggests feedback for them. Now, you do want to make sure that you read this and don't just press go on it. One of the things that the data shows is that feedback, especially timely feedback, is really important to students and one of the big factors in their learning. So you want to make sure that your voice is in there, that it's not just AI telling them, and that some of the suggestions that the AI have might just not be accurate. So you want to make sure that you're looking at them. So it's not going to automatically do it, but it's going to kind of give you a draft mode, which is nice. So, it's the first draft. So it'll just save you a lot of time, which is great. Another one is verifying an image or video. So if it was created by Google AI, you're able to now see whether it was created by Google AI, which is great. So certainly it's not yet working for every kind of image, but it's just nice to have that. So in terms of AI agents in education, there's a few things that are really huge. So in the next 12 months, we're going to see a bunch of changes. Every school year is a big deal. And one of the things is the grading agents, so helping you grade. So for certain kinds of tests like multiple choice, it's pretty much immediate. You could have students automatically graded their work and even get feedback about what was right and wrong. The feedback agent, which I just showed you, is going to be, it's in Google, but there's going to be in other places soon. One of my favorites is the parent communication agent. So if parents are communicating with you, it kind of gives you an alert. And if students' grade drops or if their attendance drops, it'll suggest communications and then give you a first draft, which is great. So, there's a lot of things happening. So what's really exciting is that you're going to be able to create your own AI agents soon to automate your work. So, like I'm using Google, it's also available in Microsoft. And I expect that maybe even by the new year, 2027, it'll be in most of the tools. So this has been in the industry for a couple of years. It's only new to education because they wanted to make sure the safeguards were there. So, there's a couple suggested things like get a daily summary of unread emails, certainly really handy. One that I certainly use all the time is notify me about emails from key people. There's certain people I don't ever want to miss their emails. But you could also create your own. So, get a pre-meeting brief in chat. So I have it every morning. Make me my daily summary of what I have to do. So my schedule. So, I'm essentially a whole department by myself. I don't have any further support. No one's working with me. There's no secretary. So I have to I'm working with three middle schools, 2 high schools, and 7 elementary schools, as well as all of the administrators in the administration building. So, it's a lot of work for one person to do, kind of way too much work for anyone to finish, to be honest. So, it used to take me a long time to just put together my agenda for the day. I was using Gmail and Google Calendar. So I gave access to my calendar and to my email, and I created a agentic tool to just make me my schedule. And then every morning, it sends it to me at 8 a.m. So you can see this as an example from one day that I have scheduled meetings with the superintendent. And then it shows me whatever urgent tasks are in the emails. So I was responding to a teacher, and then the overall agenda. So the things that I'm working on that day, including things that are even private because I gave it full access. So you see that I was looking to buy LA 28 Olympic tickets, which were, by the way, incredibly expensive, but I will be going, and that's exciting. So this shows up in your flows, and it kind of gives me an alert every morning of my schedule. So I set it for 8 because I actually go to work around 7, but not everyone emails me the things that they're looking for. So I kind of usually the first hour of my day is kind of addressing, teacher needs, things like that, or doing prep work for what I'm going to be doing that day. Here's another one. This is my superintendent, Mark Secor. So I have it anytime that he emails me or sends me a message, it gives me a high alert so I don't miss it. So this was an alert from his. He asked me to do a meeting for new administrators on AI and how to be more efficient. So that's an example. So when we're looking at these things, it's a lot to process. There's a lot going on. One of the things that's really important is just keeping the heart in the machine when you're doing. So, using AI to save time, to be more efficient, fantastic. Make sure you do it in an ethical way. Make sure that you are, uh, you know, uh, trying to use the more effective tools, the tools that really work for you. Make sure that students are being safe in their uses of it, and that you try to model the good use and always sort of protect your identity and your students' identities. But these are some elements that really, I think need to be addressed in addition. So, as an art teacher, as a creative person, as a writer, one of the things that I don't like about artificial intelligence is that it just defaults to an average voice. So everything kind of gets homogenized. And what gets lost is like the quirky, kind of fun or funny idiosyncratic language that some students use, some indigenous people, some foreign students. They have a different way of speaking. They have a different perspective. So, you don't want everything homogenized all the time. And you want to preserve what is unique about people. It's fine to use it for a professional email or for a cover letter for a job, but I don't like using it for creative writing or something like that because it does really just homogenize and everything becomes average and sort of a little boring. And also, students lose their unique lived experiences through this, right? So, that's one of the kind of issues. Like if you write a short story about local landmarks and your emotional attachment to them, it's the kind of thing that like the homogenization will just kind of erase, and it students lose agency, which is a concern as well. And then of course there's belonging. So one of the important things that I really believe in is protecting those quirky, diverse, interesting, creative, marginalized perspectives from just being sanitized by the algorithm, right? So that uniqueness always has a really important place. We make sure that we preserve that. And sometimes we will test this in class. So I'll have students write a short essay that's very personal and see what AI does to it. And then go ahead and add back the interesting part. So I think that's one of the keys, is sort of working around the tool's limitations. So here's an example in terms of the human draft and the AI rewrite. There's local slang that is kind of like interesting, and like, the weird personal memory and the raw emotion, this is an actual example that we use. So, back in the day, me and my crew used to hang out at an old rickety oak tree. My heart was pounding like crazy when we built that secret fort. I remember wearing my favorite ketchup stained shirt every single day that summer. Versus formerly, my associates and I frequented the dated oak tree on my property. I experienced significant physiological arousal during the construction of our clandestine structure. I recall wearing a particularly soiled garment repeatedly throughout that season. So the AI rewrite in this case is kind of extreme. I mean, it's probably a good vocabulary lesson, but the idea is to work on the strategy workflow. So a student writes a personal reflection, AI writes it for fixes it for perfect grammar, and the student highlights what actually happened. So this is just good to be aware of, and this is our last hands-on piece. So I would like everyone just to give this a shot. We do it in class as a 20-minute sprint to compare your human draft versus the AI rewrite and really highlight specifically the things that were changed. So I'll give everyone a moment to do that. And again, please share these on the Padlet that I shared. So, one of the other things that we need to talk about is rubrics. We really need to change the way we grade quite a bit. So, grading creative logic and defending the intent rather than the algorithm efficiency is important. So there's pivot points. I want to see like where students change their direction based on the AI output. So, AI is going to suggest different things and like, where did you change that and why? So I want you to document all those changes. The critical prompting, so did a student push back against the AI's first answer? And that's really important. So many students seem to take the AI's answers as firm and finite, and it's like, they're not always right, and you could make up your own mind. So you want to challenge the AI. And then, of course, synthesis. So how well did you blend your human voice with the technological tool? So I'm looking for more human than AI in the work that we do. So I hope everyone enjoyed this workshop. I wish it was done in person with people, but I had some technical issues. So there are some great resources in my book, Steam Power. I have another book coming out, hopefully in 2027, with ISTE. And of course, Discovery Education. So I have a number of different elements, and there's some other great work from other educators up there. I also put together emerging EdTech video series. So every week during the school year, I create a new video on a technology tool. I've done a number on different discovery elements that, they're all under 5 minutes because I understand teachers have so much time. So I started sharing them with my district, and because I'm a board member for NICEGATE, which is the New York affiliate for technology education, I share them with all of New York as well. So there's the QR code for the playlist. We're almost at over 100 videos. And then here's some of the work I've done with Discovery. So there's the AI Masterclass with Tim Needles, and the Human Touch, how imagination directs generative AI. So the Masterclass is very much the kind of things we were talking about here. There's some examples. We include students and some teachers that I work with. The Human Touch is more focused on creativity, but some great conversation starters there for students, and as well as some extensions in both of them. So there's also a PDF activity, co-creating with AI, sparking engagement with students, that you could use too. So that one is for educators only. So that's the educator facing activity with the lesson plan for 9 to 12. The other two are applicable really for anyone. So I always like to leave my sessions by saying, be kind, be creative, and change the world. I'm on social media at Tim Needles on all the tools, and my website is tim-needles.com. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please reach out.